I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
And this is going to be our first Christmas movie of the season for 2024, technically speaking, because there are two kinds of Christmas movies. There are movies about Christmas, like Santa Claus and stuff like that. And there are movies that take place at Christmas. This falls into that category. This is While You Were Sleeping, the Sandra Bullock romantic comedy. And I know, I say the Sandra Bullock romantic comedy, and people will say, which one?
Sandra Bullock was one of the queens of romantic comedy back during the 90s.
She was the every girl. She was the girl next door, America's sweetheart.
I mean, it was kind of just her and Meg Ryan for a while.
Yeah.
There was Julia Roberts, but Julia Roberts had a slightly broader career than Sandra Bullock or Meg Ryan at the time. Sandra Bullock especially has broadened her acting roles since then. Mm-hmm. Meg Ryan less so.
I mean, Sandra Bullock, she tried to expand into like action movies with Speed and Demolition Man.
Well, I mean, Demolition Man was before this.
Oh.
Demolition Man was like her first big gig, if I remember correctly. You know, she went on and, you know, she did more dramatic roles and all that kind of stuff later on. Julia Roberts hit that peak a little earlier. Mm-hmm. Meg Ryan never really hit that, if we're talking about the big rom-com stars of the 90s.
And I always laugh because I just said she's America's sweetheart, the girl next door, and then not that long ago, I want to say almost 10 years ago, she was the villain in the Minions movie. And I always found that funny that the girl who was known as the girl next door, America's sweetheart, can really play a fun villain.
Yeah, I mean, she's got range. The thing is that, more recently, she's done kind of horror movies, or she's done...
Yeah, Bird Box.
Yeah, she did Bird Box. She's done, like, the kind of Gravity, which is like, space thriller, drama stuff with The Blind Side. Let's kind of skip over that. And then she does kind of silly, she's gone back to kind of silly action stuff again. She did Lost City with Channing Tatum and Daniel Radcliffe, which I never saw. I only saw the trailers for it, but it looked so bizarre. I don't really know what it's about, but it kind of looked almost like her as Lara Croft or something. But, it's kind of that let's have her do action again kind of thing, which I'm for. She's a good action star. And then this was like Bill Pullman, kind of at Bill Pullman's height of, this was like a year before Independence Day.
Lone Star! Sorry, had to get that one out.
Yeah, no, and we knew him as Lone Star, of course. And we've already talked about Newsies, and he was in that, I mean, we've talked about several movies he was in. In fact, the cast of this film is just a bunch of people we have talked about before.
Peter Boyle.
Peter Boyle is in this. Glynis Johns, I had forgotten Glynis Johns was in this movie until starting the movie for the rewatch, and she was in the credits, and I was like, oh wow, I had totally forgotten she was in this. But boy, does she steal this movie.
Same for me, but Jack Warden.
Yeah, I had forgotten he was in this as well. I'm going to be honest with you. I saw this movie when it came out in theaters. Because, big Sandra Bullock fan, big Bill Pullman fan, Not so much a big rom-com fan, even then. I don't think I have seen this movie, since opening weekend in theaters.
I mean, and now it's like, this is 95, we're almost at 2025, so this movie's now 30 years old. And, despite the Christmas New Year's setting of the movie, Disney decided to release this movie in April of 95.
Yeah, there were some bizarre things that took place with this movie, but it was still a big hit. Everybody loved it at the time. Critics liked it. It made a whole bunch of money.
If something like that had come out today, we would have had While You Were Sleeping 2, 3, and possibly 4. But
yeah,
they let this one be a one and done.
Which kind of glad they did. I didn't want. Some things do not need to be a franchise. In fact, most things do not need to be a franchise.
So have you seen Moana 2 yet?
No. But yeah, I've heard not great things. The thing is, though, is that apparently I don't know a lot about the background of this movie, but apparently this film went through a lot of reworking, and it's kind of incredible it turned out as good as it did, because there's a lot of backstory that I've heard that this movie was kind of a piece of crap until they started filming it. I've heard that the original script was so bad that basically everybody but Sandra Bullock passed on it.
Yeah, apparently, you mentioned Meg Ryan. Disney wanted Meg Ryan in the movie, and she passed on it.
And I've heard that the reason she passed on it was that the original take on this idea was it was supposed to be gender swapped.
The woman was going to be in the coma?
Yeah. And apparently that was Meg Ryan's problem with it, was she was like, why do I want to be in a movie where I'm just in a hospital bed for the entire film? Which, fair to Meg Ryan if that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
If that story is true, more power to Meg Ryan. Because it seems the original idea of this movie is woman gets fridged and dude worms his way into her family.
That somehow makes the movie worse.
Oh yeah, that makes the movie really worse. This movie is sort of problematic.
It's already problematic in the fact that here is this single woman, no family, basically no friends, has a crush on a guy who's a regular patron at her work. He gets injured. She pretends to be his fiance. Now gender swap that. Makes it a whole lot worse. A guy pretends to be a woman's fiance because he has no family, he has no partner, he has no friends.
Yeah, and the thing is that there's also he is apparently quite wealthy.
He's a lawyer, yeah, so yeah.
Well, I mean, we see the inside of his apartment.
And that is a lofty, high-rise Chicago downtown apartment. And
Yeah, even in 1995, that is a chunk of change for
and
that
I am,
apartment.
I am the resident Chicagoan of this podcast. Yeah, that's expensive as hell.
Yeah.
You used to live in Chicago for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and I never lived in Chicago. I mean, you remember I was always like way out in the burbs.
Because it's too
So,
freaking expensive
because
to live
it's
in the
too
city.
expensive to live in Chicago. I was always like at least a 45-minute train ride anywhere I lived when I was up there.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, no. She even says at multiple points in the movie he's a rich guy. Like she refers to him as a rich guy. At multiple points in the movie. A handsome rich guy.
And that's literally all she knows. She knows that he's attractive. He must have money because he's a lawyer, and she wants that life because she's a, I guess you could say, minimum wage, go nowhere job, and
I
she just,
mean, we're all very much in a job's a job, but she's literally a token taker at the CTA before they automated everything.
mm-hmm. And they still have, again, local Chicago, and they still have people in those booths, even though they're not taking tokens. But still, yeah, that's not much to do. It's take the token and let them on through.
Yeah, I mean, the people in the I mean, even by the time I was up there, the people in the booths are just kind of there as more like security and answering questions.
Mm.
But like, yeah, this was before all the systems were automated and you had your cards and everything.
Oh yeah, back in the old days of the tokens, I remember those days. Putting a token in the bus on my way to school, and again, by the time you moved up here, it was fare cards. You would prepay a fare card, and you would scan that fare card. Now with technology, it's apps. You can pay the fare with your phone.
Yeah, I mean, they hadn't switched over to the apps by the time I moved away, but the system was entirely automated by the time I moved up there, and so the tokens were gone and there were no token takers. There were just people in booths to either call security or answer questions for tourists. But she's literally just a fair token taker, um, in this movie. And the only way this movie happens, the Christmas part of this movie is they meet because she's the only person without family. She's the only person not going anywhere for Christmas. So she's the one that they get to work because everyone else is like, I'm going to go be with my family. And her boss is like, come on, you're the only one that can work on Christmas because you're the only one lonely and pathetic enough to. But, before we kind of get too far into the weeds on that, not going back to kind of how messed up this movie was before they started filming, not only did they have trouble finding a female lead before they kind of swapped everything around and made the woman the focus of the movie, apparently Bill Pullman almost quit the movie, like before they started filming, because they all got together for the table read, which is where the actors usually meet each other for the first time, and they all get together and go through the script and see how it flows and everything. And apparently this was at the time like the most disastrous table read in Hollywood history or something.
At least to Bill Pullman.
Well, I mean, like I said, I've heard a lot of stories about how bad this movie was before they kind of got their act together and all right about the time they started filming. Like, I don't know what kind of miracle happened right at the moment they started filming this to kind of get their butts in gear. I've heard so many horror stories about the pre-production of this film that I don't know what. I can only say Disney magic on this.
Yeah, apparently the only reason Pullman did not quit is because he literally couldn't. Like his agent says, dude, I cannot get you out of this. You cannot quit another film. You're stuck. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't really know. I've read that like his agent was mad at him because he kept quitting films, but I do not know the backstory behind that. I don't know.
It could also be that he was just not in a position. Like you have nothing lined up. It's either this movie or nothing.
Yeah, I don't know, but it does make me wonder about Bill Pullman and what was going on in his life at the time.
You don't know these people's personal lives, so who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Or professional lives, like I don't know. It might have been something going on professionally, but whatever happened behind the scenes, it worked out because this ended up being like a kind of weird little gem of a movie.
I say Disney movie, and people are going to say, well, the Disney logo doesn't start this movie. Yes, it does not. This is a Hollywood Pictures movie, which was another studio created by Disney. One, to increase the output of their movies in theaters. Look how many studios Disney owns now and they're basically putting out a movie every month these days. But back then, they wanted to have more output, more movies being made, and to much like Touchtone, they wanted to do movies that didn't really gel with the Disney brand and not tarnish the Disney brand. I don't know if rom-com would have fit the Disney brand, but here we are. Of course, Hollywood Picture. We only talked about one Hollywood Picture movie so far in our podcast, and that is the original Super Mario Brothers movie from a couple of years back.
Yeah.
But there's so many
Very different tone to this one.
very different tone. But these are also the same studio would bring us like Arachnophobia and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle and Encino Man, Joy Luck Club, and of course the original Judge Dredd movie, I Am the Law.
The thing is that unlike all of those movies, this is a very family friendly film.
Yeah, they really abstain from any kind of anything close to swearing, even in situations where it would count in a PG movie. Like I'm not expecting F-bombs here, but they do G-rated swears in this movie. The only PG aspect would be references to genitalia and underwear.
Yeah. And even that is fairly mild.
Mm-hmm.
The yeah, but like we said, it's poor little Sandy Bullock who has no family because we found out that in true Disney style, she's an orphan. She got the dead parents.
Yeah, her mom dies when she's a little kid, raised by her dad. And a few years prior to the events of this movie, he passes away. So it's just her. And her life isn't exact. Again, she has this job at the CTA as a token taker, and she constantly has her landlord's son hitting on her.
This guy, not really a keeper,
He's not even a fun weekend guy.
Yeah, he's kind of icky.
For a movie set in Chicago, he's very New York coded.
That also struck me as weird.
Makes me wonder, was this movie intentionally intended to take place in New York and they just put it in Chicago?
Yeah, we couldn't get the permits to film in New York. Chicago was cheaper to film in, so she puts up with it because, if she puts up with the son, the landlord is nicer to her, and.
Possibly because no other woman would talk to the son.
Yeah. We know he's got a parole officer. We don't know why he's got a parole officer.
Stalking, maybe.
I mean, your guess is as good as anybody else's guess on this. We get no context for that.
He's just a creep. He's just a creepy guy. And he doesn't really go through any kind of character arc in the movie. He's just a stereotype for New York Italian scumbag.
Yeah, who for some reason lives in Chicago.
Yeah. So
But
there's a side plot where he starts dating one of the other female tenants after Sandra Bullock is engaged. So he starts dating another woman in the building, and that goes nowhere because when Sandra Bullock asks him later in the movie, towards the end, hey, how are you and her doing? He just breaks down. So doesn't go well for him. Maybe be less of a creep and stop trying on Sandra Bullock's shoes. But the point of this is that every day we have the hot, rich lawyer man played by Peter Gallagher, as very easy to remember his name because his character's name is Peter Callahan. That's easy. So every day she sees this guy. He's very good looking. He's in a suit. He's a lawyer. So obviously she, again, I don't blame you, Sandra Bullock. He is a good looking dude.
okay, let me just say this. When I first saw this movie, like I said, I saw this movie in the theater opening weekend. Sandra Bullock, Bill Pullman, actors I liked. Okay. And then she spends like the first half of this movie being like, ooh, look at Peter Gallagher. He is so hot. And I'm not going to say anything, but Peter Gallagher, not really my type. So, and remember, this is like 1995, and I was a young teenager. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, Sandy, you're going for like caterpillar eyebrow dude? And then I'm like, it's literally just because she has not seen Bill Pullman yet, right? Right? That's why she's like, she just hasn't met Bill Pullman yet. That's the reason why she thinks this dude is hot, right?
Well, she doesn't know anything about him other than the way he looks, and that's it. That's all she knows is how he looks.
I know, and this was possibly the first thing I ever saw Peter Gallagher in,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew nothing about him except for the way he looked. And like I said, apparently not my type, because I spent the whole movie being baffled as to why she was into him. Because I found him very off-putting for the entire movie, and literally all he does in the movie is lie in a hospital bed. And I'm like, what do you see in this dude?
I mean, it's purely looks. I mean, she even said, like, once we find out about him, he turns out to be kind of an asshole.
Yeah, but, and I was like, literally, what do you see in this dude? Like, I could not understand it. I was like, Bill Pullman's coming up in this movie, right?
At least they don't stretch it out, because he's in the coma 10 minutes into this movie. So it's Christmas Day. He gets on his train. Where is he going on Christmas Day that he needs to go on the train? Wouldn't offices be closed? But we're not going to talk about that. Peter Gallagher.
Who knows? He was probably just heading home
In the beginning of the day.
I don't know, he could have been, like, out to breakfast with some people. Apparently, he had, like, he was estranged from his family because once they meet Sandra Bullock, they're like, oh yeah, we hadn't talked to him in ages.
Hmm.
They knew nothing about what was going on in his life. So the family had not seen Peter in quite a while, apparently, once they, get to the hospital and meet Sandra Bullock's Lucy here. So who knows? He might have been doing the same thing she was, like, I'm not doing anything else on Christmas. He might have just gone to the office to get some extra work in.
Possibly.
He's a lawyer. Those billable hours, man,
Yeah, and as Chicagoan, I'm going to hate saying this, but because it's Chicago, he gets mugged.
The plot needs to happen.
Yeah, he gets mugged on the train station, and the muggers push him onto the tracks. Sandra Bullock jumps onto the tracks and saves him from the oncoming express train. And yeah, he's in a coma. So we are in the hospital. Man, Chicago never beating the allegations. Sorry.
Yeah.
But as this is happening, Sandra Bullock mutters to herself, I was going to marry him, because she is fantasizing about this man. She sees this man as he's very attractive, very successful. She wants a piece of that. So she mutters, I was going to marry him. One of the nurses in the ER overhears her and mistakenly believes that she is Peter Gallagher's fiance. So that's how she's allowed to go into his room and look at him and kind of talk to him. And that's where the entire plot of this movie starts. Is his family busts in that, oh, hey, our son is in the hospital. He's in a coma. What's going on? Who's this chick? Oh, that's his fiance. Because it's not a true rom-com unless there's some sort of misunderstanding. Like, this movie hits all of the traditional rom-com beats, for better or for worse.
I mean, yeah, look, if you love rom-coms, this hits all the sweet spots. If you absolutely loathe rom-coms, this hits all the things you hate about rom-coms.
Like I said, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's every single rom-com trope ever, So, depending on your feelings on these particular tropes, you're gonna love it or hate it for the exact same reason. But I will say, we've talked before that this is not my favorite genre. This is way down the list of genres I like.
And it's a Christmas movie, which you're also not really a fan of all Christmas movies.
Yeah, but I still kind of like this movie. Spoiler for the end of the episode. So,
Yeah.
I
mean, let's yeah.
But I will say, we kind of did gloss over the fact that she literally does save his life after because she does jump on the tracks and, roll him out of the way of the train and,
And as someone who lives in Chicago, there are signs, probably because of this movie, there are signs on every station, do not jump on the tracks. You will die if not hit by the train, by the electrical current passing through the tracks. That third rail.
Yeah. Yeah, that third rail does not exist in this movie. If you notice.
I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever been near or if you live in, like, New York too, which has an almost identical system for running the trains, of course, but they obviously filmed that on a mocked up or disused rail line somewhere else, because that is not an L line, because there is no third rail on that line. He falls in between the rails on that.
Yeah, he would have fallen on that third rail and been electrocuted to death.
Yeah. Then she is able to roll him out of the way underneath the platform, which, do not count on that being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, most
a long
of
way
those,
down.
well, yeah, most of those stations will either have, like, concrete under there, or that is just a drop to the street.
I mean, it's called the L because it is elevated track.
Yeah.
Keyword, elevated.
You're either on concrete and rebar platform, in which case that roll would have just whacked you into a concrete barrier, or you're on a metal frame, steel bar frame, in which case she would have rolled them right off the track and right down like a good 30-40 foot drop onto pavement.
Right in the middle of Michigan Avenue.
But they're specifically at the Wabash Randolph. Yeah.
Oh, I know that stop. I pass by it every day on my way to my real world job.
Yeah, I mean, that is a heavily trafficked intersection, and even if you survived the drop, you would not have survived the traffic.
Yeah. But yeah, she does save his life. So even if she hadn't said, I'm going to marry him, she still is concerned for the guy. Because, he fell on the track. He could have freaking died.
Yeah, and there's a cop that's there to, like, take her statement, because he was mugged, and they're trying to find the muggers, but also the cop tells the nurse, like, she literally saved his life, And the nurse is like, oh, it's even better than that. She's his fiance. And they're all like, oh, wow, not only are you a hero, but you saved the life of your fiance. And then all the family comes in, like his entire, 8-person family or whatever comes in right at that moment. And they're all like, oh my God, you saved his life and you're marrying into the family. We didn't even know he was seeing anyone. We haven't heard from him in ages. This is the best news ever,
And, even it's implied that they all live in Chicago, but it is Christmas, so go with it. So, yeah, I mean, and we mentioned it, Peter Boyle plays the dad, and he's great in this movie. Glynis Johns, who plays the grandma, and they're all like, don't say anything because grandma's going to have a heart attack.
And of course, there's Glynis Johns with her British accent, because, she could never do any other accent. So she still sounds like Glynis Johns from Mary Poppins, she still sounds exactly like her, but, at like 70 or whatever when she did this movie. You never know if she's saying things because she's beginning to lose her memory, or if she's doing that thing that some old women do where they just say whatever they want and pretend like, oh, I'm just a doddering old woman, like.
Because at that age, you're old, you don't give an F anymore. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I know so many women who've gotten to that age who just say whatever they want, and if anybody questioned them, they're like, oh, I said what now? No, I didn't. Like.
Also, okay, the movie skirts around it, but it's also can't tell if they are celebrating Christmas, so obviously they are Christian, Catholic, but also Jewish.
Oh, no. That's okay. Weirdly, he does have a Jewish godfather. That's like his dad's best friend is a Jewish guy, and they got him to be the godfather.
But they do. Sandra Bullock does bring this up. Wait, I thought you had to be Catholic to be the Godfather. Yeah, he's been my best friend since we were kids. We just made an exception.
Yeah. So like Peter's family is Catholic, but the best friend, Peter Boyle's best friend, Jack Warden, who is I think his name is Saul in the movie. He's the Godfather, and he says that all his family has also died, and so he's alone for the holidays. And so he's just, for the last however many years, has been spending Christmas with the family, and they've just kind of adopted him. So even though he's Jewish, they're just like, you'll come over and you'll, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are families like that who are just like, yeah, we've just adopted this person. They're not really related to us, but they're, you know.
Yeah. So as all of this is happening, we enter. Bill Pullman finally enters the story as Jack, the other son, who, as we say, as they mentioned in the movie, Peter Boyle's character Ox, and it used to be both sons working with him, both Peter Gallagher and Bill Pullman working with him. But the Peter Gallagher's character went off to law school. And as you said, Kiki, kind of disassociated with the family in a way. And so it's just Bill Pullman being the only other family member in the business. And he kind of has a side hustle of his own where he's just making his own furniture and selling them on the side. And he's kind of made some good money off of it. And that's a little a little side plot there where he kind of wants to break away from his dad's business and start one of his own, a carpentry business. But he's afraid of how his father will react. He already lost one son out of the business. He doesn't want his father to lose both of his sons out of the business.
The dad owns a resale business where he does estate sales. So when people die, he handles selling their estate.
And we do see him reading the obituaries, looking for new clients.
Yeah. I actually know people who do this for a living.
Mm.
It's a really interesting business. And sometimes you're dealing with antiques, sometimes you're dealing with furniture, sometimes you're dealing art. So you have to know quite a wide range of things and the people who might want to buy those things. But yeah, the kind of minor conflict that turns out not to really be a conflict at all, spoiler, is that Bill Pullman is more interested in the furniture part than the brokerage part. And so he'd rather just go be a carpenter, and it turns out he's really good at it. And Peter Boyle says, that's kind of that's a nice side hustle. And he's like, no, it's a good business. I'm actually kind of making bank. And, running the business for you is kind of eating into my rather lucrative carpentry business.
And I love how it's settled in the movie because, in any other romantic comedy like this, it would be part of the main plot. But because it's such a side plot, that, Peter Boyle just looks at Bill Pullman and said, you could have told me this a while ago. I could have sold the business for twice of what it's worth, retire, take your mom on a cruise.
Yeah, it turns out that there was some other relative that wanted to buy the business for kind of more than it's worth. And he's like, I could have scammed your uncle so-and-so for paying me way more than the business is worth and retired years ago, but I thought you wanted to be the and son part of this business, you know?
And I like how that's the resolution. That not, oh, like my son is leaving me in our family business, and not like, dude, I want to retire.
Yeah.
I want to retire and go on a cruise with my wife.
The funny thing is that this is entirely a comedy of errors, in the sense of this whole thing is just built on misunderstandings. If Sandra Bullock at the beginning had just said, like, oh, wait, where'd you get the idea I was his fiance? Then the entire plot would have screeched to a halt right there, and she still might have been friends with the family, because they would have been like, oh my god, you saved our son. What an awesome woman you are, you know? They seem like those type of people.
Yeah, you should come over. Well, we always make extra food unless we got someone. No, I don't have any family. Oh no, you're welcome to us. You know, like
That would have probably happened. Look at how they treat the next door neighbor, you know? Like, come on.
They made the next door neighbor their son's godfather despite him being Jewish.
Yeah. So this seems like a very open and loving family who would have probably just taken her in and made her part of the family just for saving her son's life. It's saving their son's life, you know?
Yeah. Would have been a much shorter movie.
Well, the rest of the movie could have just focused on her falling in love with Bill Pullman.
True.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
This would have been an entirely different and less problematic movie. I mean, as far as problematic rom-coms go, this is one of the less problematic ones. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not 50 First Dates. It is really fascinating that you could have had a almost identical movie with a slightly less problematic plot if at the beginning of the movie she was like, why did you think I was his fiance? And they were like, oh, I heard you say I was going to marry that man. And it was like, well, you know, he comes by my booth every day and he's kind of hot and whatever. And they're like, oh, isn't that sweet of you? You had kind of a crush on our son. And, you know, don't you have a man in your life? You're a very pretty girl. And, you know, we have another son, you know,
like, you're a nice girl. You should be with a nice girl. Our son finally has a nice girl.
You know, I mean, it would have been a weirder, funnier movie, but also they've kind of written the family like that anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
they're very welcoming of Sandra Bullock into the family.
Yeah, and honestly, if there was a stranger that had just saved one of my relatives' lives, and I found out they were going to be all alone for the holidays, that person's eating at my house.
There's that story that gets passed around every year of the grandma that texted the wrong person, and now that kid and this old lady are friends over that mistyped text.
Yeah.
So, like, it could have been the same situation here. Like, you're welcome to join us for Christmas dinner and come to our New Year's party, and she would have had that surrogate family that she wanted, because, like I said, she has no one.
And it's still a rom-com, because then Bill Pullman walks in the door, and he's super hot, and she's like, oh, wow. And he's like, what's this chick doing here? And they're like, what, you never call? Your brother's in a coma, and this chick saved his life. And, you know, like, and then it's like a whole series of things of, like, you know, and you can still call it the same thing, you know, it's like.
You can even have the other fiance's storyline.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of want to talk about that, because we find out that Peter Gallagher's character was involved with another woman that he asked to marry her, who said no, and then moved out of the country, but then changed her mind saying, yes, I will marry you, and then came back to Chicago, only to find out, oh, he's now engaged to Sandra Bullock. And she doesn't seem to be a very good person.
Well,
Very,
also, he doesn't seem to be a very good person either.
yeah, when he finally wakes up and we actually start to learn more about him, he's kind of an asshole. Because, spoiler, again, we'll go ahead here. She's married to another man. So he was having an affair with a married woman, asked that married woman to marry him. So she is about to leave her husband for Peter Gallagher. But also, we learned about Peter Gallagher and Bill Pullman's childhood as he would throw rocks at birds and stuff.
Yeah, he saved squirrels, but it turns out that he's the one that endangered the squirrels anyway. And the whole family's like, "Oh, isn't it so sweet that he saved the whole squirrels?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, I threw rocks at squirrels," like.
That he almost stopped a person after, but feigned a leg injury so he wouldn't have to. So yeah, we find out that Peter Gallagher's character is kind of an asshole, but seemingly, as his godfather has this conversation with him, hey, you have a second chance at life. Don't waste it. But this is also why he's trying to get him to actually get together with Sandra Bullock and keep the lie going, because we find out that he knows truth. Very early on in that conversation, he's actually right outside the hospital room and hears Sandra Bullock's confession to the comatose Peter Gallagher. And he's kept the secret this entire time. And he even says, don't tell them. Which, that's very bad advice. Keep the lie going because the lie is making the family happy. They almost lost their son. As long as you pretend to be the fiance, they have their son back. If you reveal the truth, they'll lose their son again. Kind of weird, kind of BS, honestly.
Yeah. The thing is that both Peter and his actual girlfriend are awful because, like you said, she's married. She moves out of the country, apparently, and she just leaves her cat with him. Like, you just abandon your cat, you horrible woman.
Yeah.
Also, like, she's cheating on her husband, and Peter is buying her all kinds of plastic surgery. Like, how long had it been since she'd seen her husband? Because, like, her husband doesn't notice that, like, she's getting all this plastic surgery?
Doesn't notice that his wife suddenly has a new nose and new boobs.
Yeah, all of which Peter paid for, apparently, so he's not questioning at all what is going on and where she's getting the money to pay for this. I mean, maybe she's independently wealthy. We don't know anything about her, but,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell he's awful because, like, she walks into his apartment and look at that apartment. That is my nightmare apartment. So she walks in and she goes, "Oh wow, it's so clean." Like, it's not clean, it's sterile from an aesthetic point of view,
Yeah, I mean, the color, it's all white walls, all white everything. It feels like no one lives there.
But also, it does feel like someone lives there, but it doesn't feel like he lives there, or it shouldn't feel like he lives there, because here's the thing. The one thing that I noticed about Peter?
Hmm.
Who is the only person he has pictures of?
Himself?
Himself. She opens up his wallet, and his wallet has pictures of him. Now, back in the day when people kept pictures in their wallet, who do you know who kept pictures of themselves in their wallet? Just pictures of themselves. Not
No
pictures
one.
of themselves with their family.
That is weird, and we see, by all the pictures by his phone is a picture of himself. Like, no pictures of his brother or his father or his mother or his cousins or his grandmother or his godfather, just him or his other girlfriend. That is also very convenient that he did not have pictures of this other girlfriend in his wallet.
And none of them are like candid shots. They're not like vacation pictures or anything.
These are
They are,
professionally shot.
yeah, they are professional portraits of him. And they are the only photos he has in his wallet or in his house. And I'm like, no, run. That is the biggest red flag.
I will put this out there. And it's something that Sandra Bullock doesn't get. And I get it's I maybe because I do have brothers that I get what Bill Pullman's character is doing. Because obviously he is falling in love with her. She is falling in love with him. But in his mind, this is my brother's fiance. That's wrong. I cannot fall in love with my brother's fiance, as far as he is concerned, even though throughout most of the movie he's trying to debunk this. He doesn't believe it. You know, how can my brother go for Sandra Bullock? And not to call Sandra Bullock unattractive. She is a beautiful woman. But they make her look as plain Jane as possible for her. And again, look at the other girlfriend who is glammed up. So, you know, he kind of doesn't buy it. He tries to catch her in the lie, even, you know, oh, hey, I heard that you're dating your landlord's son. Oh, no, he's just spouting stories. But at the end of it, when he is convinced, in his mind, that is his brother's fiance. Even though he is falling in love with her, he knows he can't do this. He cannot, because she even says, give me a reason not to marry your brother. And he says, I cannot give you one. Because, again, that is still his brother's fiance. As a brother, he cannot say, do not marry my brother, marry me. That is so wrong. That is going in, that will take this movie in a completely different direction. And Sandra Bullock's character takes this as, he doesn't want me. She specifically says he doesn't want me because he didn't say don't marry my brother, marry me. That's the only thing that irks me about that whole thing. You are pretending to be his brother's fiance. Of course he cannot say that to you. What kind of guy would he be? What kind of brother would he be?
Yeah. You bring up a good point, and it's very obvious. You know, it's a well acted scene because you can tell that Bill Pullman's character desperately wants to be like, you two are not right for each other. Do not do this. You know, because that's the thing, you know, I mean, we kind of glossed over it. If you haven't seen the movie, you know, when Peter Gallagher wakes up and everybody's like, she's your fiance, and he's like, I have literally no memory of this woman. And they're like, oh no, you have amnesia. It's a soap opera. And he's like, okay, I guess so. Everyone in my life is telling me that this woman is my fiance. I do not remember her. He's like, I love the scene where he's just naming the most obscure facts from his life.
His high school locker combination.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. You know, he's bringing out like just the most random, obscure, inconsequential things. And he's like, I can remember all this stuff, but I can't remember having a fiance. Maybe the family really should have looked into it, but they've fallen so in love with Sandra Bullock, and who wouldn't?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is, you know, when you said Saul looks at him and goes like, hey, this is your chance to like do something good with your life. And he tells him, he's like, you know, just spend like 2 hours with her, and if you don't fall in love with her, because he knows like what an absolute cinnamon roll Sandra Bullock's character is, you know?
Because like you said, the family have already fallen in love with her, and she has already fallen in love with the family.
Yeah.
So it's like, spend some time with her. Look into those eyes. And if you don't fall in love with that woman, I don't know what to tell you. Which, yeah. I mean, it's Sandra Bullock. If I'm spending 5 minutes with someone that's like Sandra Bullock, damn it, I am going to fall in love with her.
I mean, I've never met Sandra Bullock, and I'm in love with her.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yes, she's an actress. This is a character, but I've seen her in interviews. She has this is her personality.
I mean, Keanu Reeves says she's a wonderful person, and who am I to argue with Keanu Reeves? That is what, Peter Gallagher does. He proposes for what he thinks is a second time, but is actually the first time, of course. And Sandra Bullock is like, you know what? Sure, why not?
Also, that it plays into the other subplot of the movie. Sandra Bullock dreams of going around the world. Her father put dreams in her head of, going around the world, seeing the sights. She has a passport, but thanks to the circumstances of life, she's never left Chicago. A lot of it was her dad's health a few years back and her stuck in a kind of dead end job. So she never had the opportunities to get a stamp on her passport. And that's kind of her dream, to get a stamp on that passport, specifically from Italy. She wants to go to Italy. And he's rich enough that he could afford a trip to Italy. So why not? She even says it. This man is going to give me the one thing I want, and that is a stamp from Italy on my passport. There are worse things to marry people for.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that she knows she doesn't love him, it's that she knows she's fallen in love with his brother.
Hmm.
I mean, she still doesn't know anything about him because he's been in a coma this whole time.
Yeah.
But she's definitely fallen in love with his brother. And that's, of course, when she's like, hey, any reason I shouldn't marry your brother? And he's like, nah, I'm not going to do my bro like that. So they decide, like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and get married tomorrow because this is a rom-com and why not? And she's standing at the altar and she objects to her own wedding because she's actually in love with his brother.
Yep, she comes clean. I believe they're actually getting married in the hospital chapel because the nurses are there and he's still tied to an IV.
Yeah.
Yeah, she objects to her own wedding. She comes clean. I was never his fiance. It was a lie. But by the time I wanted to tell you guys, I had already fallen in love with the family. I had already fallen in love with someone else. And then this is where everything comes to a head. Hey, here comes the other girlfriend, and she's married, and blah, 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 blah.
And as everybody's fighting, Sandra Bullock's like, okay, I'm just going to slip out of this situation and go back to my apartment and just, live the rest of my life and try not to damage this family any more than I have.
Also, there's again, it goes nowhere, but the subplot of, again, another misunderstanding where they believe Sandra Bullock is pregnant.
Yeah. And that's like a misunderstanding of one of her coworkers.
Because getting married so quickly after meeting the guy, oh, you must be pregnant. Oh, no, she's pregnant.
What is wrong with people that they just kind of like overhear somebody say something and instead of just going up to the person and being like, hey, are you pregnant? Is that why you're getting married so quickly? They just decide to be like, hey, everybody, they're pregnant.
Because it's a romantic comedy and misunderstandings keep the plot moving.
Yeah, I know, but like, are people really like that? What the hell?
In 2024, yes. But yeah, we get our happy ending here because Sandra Bullock's back on the job. People are passing by with tokens, and someone drops in an engagement ring. Like, wait, this is not a token. Why is this here? And he looks up, and there's Bill Pullman and the entire family. I need to ask you a question.
Will you marry my entire family? We're all crazy, but you know.
We love you and you love us, and yay!
And apparently they end up getting married on a CTA train or something. I don't know.
As someone who rides the CTA on a daily basis, I would not get married on a CTA train. And apparently, it is an Orange Line train. Since they are going on their honeymoon, I assume they're on their way to Midway Airport to go to Italy.
I mean, she does say in the ending narration that Bill Pullman took her to Italy. And then, of course, she gives us the title of the movie that one day, you know, Peter says, "Hey, when did you fall in love with my brother?" And she's like, "Oh, I fell in love with him while you were sleeping."
Haha, she said it!
She said the name of the movie! Yay!
But, you know, and yeah, I mean, it's a cute movie. I'm going to say it. The movie is cute. Again, if you like romantic comedies, this is one of the better romantic comedies. If you are not a fan of romantic comedies, you're probably not going to dig this one. But Kiki, you did say it earlier, but let's make it official here. Does While You Were Sleeping have the magic?
I mean, yeah, it's Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman at their rom-commiest. And that's adorable, and you can't take that away from them. I'm not a big fan of rom-coms. This is like one of the tropiest rom-coms, and yet I still like it.
I think it's because of the chemistry between Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman. They have amazing chemistry in this movie, which, yeah, I'm going to say it, that saves this movie.
I think if it was any other actors, I might hate this movie. Because honestly, if you were to just tell me this plot, I would probably be like, this is the dumbest thing ever. But you just can't help but be like, oh, you should look at these two actors. I just want to smush their faces together, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you two are so adorable.
I will say this movie does have the magic, but I will say it is because of Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman and their chemistry in this movie that saves this movie, as tropey as this rom-com is.
And because of Glynis Johns, and because of Peter Boyle, and because of, I mean, like, this cast was the perfect cast for this movie. This was a one-shot movie that everything fell into place to make all of the, not the worst rom-com tropes, but all of the kind of cringiest rom-com tropes maybe fall into place in a way that makes you go like, okay, with these people in place, I don't hate it.
And you have the added Christmas motif of the movie, Christmas, New Year's. So, like, if you're kind of don't want to watch a traditional Christmas movie and you just want to watch a nice, cute movie with Sandra Bullock in it, there are worse movies to watch.
Yeah, if you want a mild Christmas vibe without Christmas being shoved in your face, maybe this one.
Yeah.
But nobody ever remake this movie. Nobody ever make a sequel to this movie. Nobody ever touched this movie. This was lightning in a bottle. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Let's leave it alone and just be glad we have it, okay?
I don't want a Disney Plus sequel movie with these two. No.
No. Not with these two, not with anybody else.
Yeah.
No. Like we had it and it was good, and let's remember it as it was. It is still fun to watch today. It's strangely, you know, sometimes you get these time capsule things where you're like, well, we have to look at it and remember that it was made in a particular time, and you know, with the exception of maybe the minor tiny little subplot about the dude trying on Sandra Bullock's shoes, which is like 20 seconds of the movie, and I don't know what they were trying to say there. Like, I don't know if it was...
I think it was an obsession thing. Like, I've seen guys... It's a trope in these kinds of things of men trying on the woman that they're obsessed with clothing or their perfume. In some cases, their makeup, just to have something that once touched that woman touch them.
I think it was probably more of maybe he was supposed to be a foot fetishist rather than like any sort of statement on his gender identity.
No, yeah, he was just obsessed with Sandra Bullock and maybe was feet and underwear.
Yeah, I don't know. But maybe you could point to that and be like, I don't know, that's a little cringe. You know, and other than the fact of like the way the whole plot gets started is kind of a little strange. But it's more just like she's trying not to upset the family, and, you know, I don't know.
There are worse movies.
Way worse, yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm gonna date this episode. There was just a movie that got just released as we are recording this episode. Rom-com Christmas movie, Hot Frosty. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I have not watched it.
I'm not going to watch it, but
yeah,
again,
no.
There are worse Christmas-themed romantic comedies out there that are still being made today. So, like I said, as far as Christmas romantic comedies are concerned, this is one of the better ones. And there is a timeless charm that very few romantic comedies have in this movie. Yes, it is 90s Chicago. You know, like you said, there's a couple of cringe moments in with some of the comedy, but this feels very timeless in its presentation.
Yeah, a couple of the jokes are dated in the sense of they are references that I'm not sure kids today would get. Like Peter Boyle says, I want to go on a cruise with Kathy Lee Gifford. Like, I want to go on a cruise makes sense, but that Kathy Lee Gifford part of the joke doesn't land anymore.
And they mentioned several tall actors because their son, Peter Gallagher, is a tall man, and women love tall men. So they start listing off quite a number of tall actors, both from like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and so on.
Yeah, and it's just, there are dated references in the sense of this was made in the 90s, so you're not going to get a bunch of YouTubers and TikTok stars mentioned. But I was surprised how well this held up, because boy, have we learned when going back through our nostalgia that it does not always hold up.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that this one didn't really have any, like, you know, especially with comedy, sometimes, you know, comedy ages like milk. And this one fortunately held up, with the exception of a couple of just jokes that maybe the kids wouldn't get these days. Which is, if that's the worst you can say about a movie, man, good for that movie.
Yeah, like I said, it's very timeless for what it is, which very few romantic comedies have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely has magic, and yeah, it's. I would put it on like I said, if you want something to watch in the background during the holidays, that's not Christmas in your face. Yeah. As for next week, Disney is releasing the brand new Lion King prequel, Mufasa, The Lion King, with songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm so glad you're doing this movie and not Moana 2. So we are going to go back into the Disney archives to the first time Disney did a Lion King prequel. We are returning to the world of the direct-to-video Disney sequel for Lion King 1.5. Not many movies with half in the title.
Yeah, not a whole bunch of them. I'm gonna say this is gonna be another first watch for me.
Oh.
So we'll see how that goes.
So yeah, while the prequel Mufasa is centered around Mufasa and Scar, Lion King 1.5 will be centering around Timon and Pumbaa, how they met and their relationship. So that is going to be very interesting to go back to. So come back next week for Lion King 1.5, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available every Monday at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.